Students, today we are going to learn 1.5 Joan of Arc, written by George Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw, 1856 to 1950. He was an Irish playwright and a critic. He has written more than 60 plays and he has been awarded with the Nobel Prize in 1925. This particular lesson is in the form of a dialogue in a play, and we will try to understand this lesson through the central idea and the summary and a short presentation that I have made for you. So let us see first of all the central idea. Joan of Arc by George Bernard Shaw is a play narrating or telling the story of a courageous and undying spirit of a girl, namely Joan. It outlined John's bold attempt to convince to make believe Captain Robert to allow her to fight the Englishmen. Throughout the play, we come across John's qualities that make her stand out from the ordinary soldiers. Brave and blunt, John's story makes for a good read as she is one of the earliest examples of women empowerment. The scene begins with the background of the Hundred-Year War between England and France. Captain Robert, the military officer, is discussing about Joan, a teenager girl whom he clearly dislikes. We see that the stewards, which are all around Captain Robert, they all are praying, being all praise for Joan, who has managed to inspire the French soldiers to fight against the English. In the meanwhile, Joan enters to meet Captain Robert and tells her plan to him. But Robert threatens to put her behind the bars, but she is very bold and very straightforward. She informs Robert that the Pollengy, Jack, Godshave, Dick and their servants, John of Henencourt and Julian, will accompany her to fight against the English. But Robert feels that she has lost her mind because according to him, his men, namely the soldiers, can do the job better. This girl cannot do the job better because along with Paul, Dick, John and Jack and Julian, she cannot manage to fight the great enemy. And therefore, Robert sends for Monsignor de Poligny and inquires if he was taking John very seriously. And Poligny explains that there is something about John and he thinks that it is a good idea to allow John to meet the Dauphin in Chinon because Dauphin is scared and wouldn't fight to stop the English. He believes that Joan herself is a bit of miracle who can miraculously free Orleans, and therefore John de Paul is also supporting. However, Robert is not convinced, but Robert is not believing. He tries to scare John, but she seems unafraid and tells him that if God is on your side, nothing is difficult. John puts out that the French soldiers would run away to save their lives, save their skins, but she would teach them to fight for France. Finally, Robert decides to take a risk at the insistence of Poligny and gives John a chance as there is something about her that is extremely convincing. Joan of Arc actually was a girl from the peasant origin. Joan of Arc was born to peasant parents in 1412 in Domremy, France. She became a skilled and hard-working girl in her childhood. She behaved like an ordinary peasant girl except for her extreme pious nature, holy nature. She began hearing voices of angels when she was about 13 years old. She says that those voices were of Saint Catherine, Saint Margaret and Saint Michael. It was the time when the 100 Years of War between 1937 to 1453 was going on between the English and the French, in which France suffered heavy losses. John said that the voices ordained her to help Dauphin. Dauphin, the title of the heir to French throne, charged to become the King of France in his fight against England and Burgundy. The traditional location for Charles to be ordained or crowned as the King of France was Reims, and which was under the control of English. John went to Vauquelin to offer her aid to Charles. Initially, her proposal was laughed at. However, she was granted an audience with Dauphin later. Charles accepted John's help due to his difficult situation in which he was not able to fight against the English and Burgundians. He gave her a horse and a contingent of troops to help end the siege of Orleans by the English. John was able to drive the English out of Orleans following the sudden commands from the voices she heard. The end of the siege of Orleans was considered as a miracle, and it broke the myth of invincibility of the English. That means English cannot be defeated. Joan was called the Maid of Orleans. The miraculous power of Joan of Arc made the French army very, very confident, and under her leadership, it won many battles like Battle of Patry and sent the English out of Rheims. Charles was brought to Rheims to be officially crowned as the King Charles VII of France on July 17th. John and Duke Alencon suggested taking back the control of Paris from the English. But after the first day of fighting, Charles called off the assault on Paris as he was running low on funds, no money. John was made a French noble for her service to France. Later, John kept on fighting for Charles' interest. John was holding off Burgundian troops at the Battle of Compiègne in May 1430 to help the French town people flee. To her bad luck, she was captured by John of Luxembourg. However, John had become so popular with the common people by this time that the English and the Burgundians thought that her immediate killing would cause an outrage outbreak, and many will make her a martyr. She will be considered as a martyr, Shaheed. So they gave her to the church in order to discredit her, in order to punish her. John made two attempts to escape, including a jump from 60 feet high tower. Then she was put on trial under Bishop Pierre Cauchon for suspected heresy. Heresy is speaking against the church and witchcraft. Cauchon persistently made efforts to make her confess that she had invented the voices and found her guilty of heresy. John had signed an abjuration, meaning is given there rejection or disowning, admitting that her previous statements were lies. But after a few days, she said that she hadn't meant the abjuration. At this time, she was sentenced to be burned at a stake. Consequently, John was burned on May 30th, 1431, when she was only 19 years of old. So consequently, the church gave her the punishment to be burned alive. And that is the story of this particular daring, straightforward, courageously God-fearing, namely John of Arc. Thank you. I hope you understood the lesson. Have a nice day.